Welcome to Mr. Ace Math. This lesson is on adding and subtracting like fractions. And this term like fractions is just a really fancy way of saying fractions that have the same denominator. But before you begin this lesson, you should make sure that you're comfortable with fractions, basic addition, basic subtraction, mixed numbers, and improper fractions. So make sure you're comfortable with those and let's get started. So why is the denominator so important? Tons of my students have asked me that. Why is that bottom number that important? It's important for two reasons. The first is because it tells you the number of pieces. And the second is because it says the size of each piece. Everyone just thinks that the denominator tells you the first thing, how many pieces there are. But it also tells you how big each of those pieces is going to be. So let's say, for example, here we have 1/2. Well, this here is 1 whole. 1/2 is one of the two. And here we have 1/4. Well, there's 4 total pieces here. So far, this is 1 whole. We're only going to take one of those 4 pieces. When we try to put them together, we can't really do it. It gives us a really unclear answer. And the reason why it gives us an unclear answer is because the pieces are different sizes, so we can't put them together. So in order to add or subtract fractions, we have to make the pieces the same sizes. Therefore, the denominators must be the same. Now there are two types of fractions. There's like fractions, where the fractions have the same denominators, and there's unlike fractions, where fractions have different denominators. Let's take a look at a couple of examples to make sure that we can tell the difference. Here we have 3/4, and here we have 1/3. Are these fractions like or unlike? Well, look at the denominators. The bottom here, the denominator here is 4, the denominator here is 3. Therefore, they are unlike fractions. How about here? Are they like or unlike? Well, these two fractions are like because they both have 5s in their denominators. How about here? These two fractions are like fractions because they both have 10 in their denominators. It's the same number. How about here? Well, these two fractions are unlike because the denominator here is 25 and the denominator here is 20. How about in this example? Well, these two fractions are like, and they're like because they both have 31 in their denominators. And how about this one? It's a little bit tricky, but it's the same exact principle that applies. Do you think these are like or unlike? These two fractions are unlike. Don't get fooled by the fact that they contain the same numbers. The denominator here is 73, but the denominator here is 50. Okay, so now that we have a good understanding of like fractions and unlike fractions and why the denominator is so important, now we can get into adding and subtracting like fractions. So addition and subtraction both have the same rule. 1. Keep the denominator. And 2. Add or subtract the numerator. It's actually pretty simple, but I want to show you exactly what's happening so that you understand exactly why it's being done. Let's take these wholes here, but we're not going to add all of these together. We're just going to add 1/4 plus 3/4. So here of the 4 pieces we only need 1 of them, and here of the 4 pieces we need 3 of them. Now remember why I said the denominator is so important. Look at the size of these pieces. Because the pieces are the same size, I can put them together and it gives me a very crystal clear answer. There's 4 out of 4 pieces here. Therefore, we have 1 whole now. And that's our final answer. 1/4 plus 3/4 gives us 4/4, which as you can see here, gives us 1 whole. So how about this example? Here we have 1 whole because it's 5 out of 5 pieces. And here we have 1 whole because this is also 5 out of 5 pieces. And we know that each whole has to have 5 pieces because the denominators are 5. So we don't need all 5 of these pieces. How many pieces of this do we need? Well, we only need 2 pieces. And how about here? How many of these 5 pieces do I need? Well, the answer is 4 pieces, because it's 4 out of 5, 4/5. So now I want to put these two together, 2/5 plus 4/5. And because the pieces are the same size, I can put them together. And now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I have 6/5. Now here's the thing with this problem. This is an improper fraction. So remember how 1 whole consists of 5 pieces? So I'm going to put that by itself. Here I now have 5 out of 5, which is 1 whole. And here I have 1/5. So when I turn this into a mixed number, that's going to be 1 and 1/5. Here's my 1 whole because it's 5 out of 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this is my piece out of 5, my 1 piece out of 5. And that's why it's 1/5. Altogether, this makes 1 and 1/5. So let's take a look at this example. It's our first example where we need to subtract. And we've got 7/10 minus 1/10. Now here we have 1 whole. This whole thing is 1 whole. And it has 10 out of 10 pieces, which is why it's 1 whole. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. But we're not starting off from 1 whole. We're starting off from 7/10. So we can get rid of 3 of the pieces. And now we have 7/10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 out of 10 total pieces. Minus 1/10. So we're going to take 1 of the 10 pieces away. And that gives us 6/10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now here's the thing with this problem. Our answer is 6/10, but we can reduce that fraction to 3/5. If we divide each of these by 2, 6 divided by 2 is 3, 10 divided by 2 is 5, that gives me 3/5. And what that means is I'm not going to change the number of pieces here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change the way it looks. Instead of having 2 separate pieces in each column, I'm going to make it 1 piece. So we have 5 total pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And of the 5 total pieces, we have 3 remaining. And that's why our final answer is 3/5. Here's another subtraction example. Here we've got 7/8 minus 5/8. Now here we have 1 whole, 8 pieces out of 8 total pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But the question doesn't start off with 1 whole, it starts off with 7/8. So we'll get rid of 1 piece. Now we've got 7/8 minus 5/8. So we're going to take away 5 of those 8 pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this leaves me with 2/8. Out of 8 total pieces, I've got 2 left. Now just like in the last example, I can reduce this answer. And if I divide both of these by 2, I'll end up with 1/4. Now what happens is this. Instead of having 8 total pieces, I'm now going to have 4 total pieces. And of the 4 total pieces, I've only got 1 shaded. And that's what happens whenever you reduce your answer. You don't change the value, you're just representing the same exact thing using different numbers. And that means here, my final answer is 1/4. So here are some more examples done with just straight math. So what we'll do is we'll keep the denominators the same, and we'll either add or subtract the numerators, depending on what our operation is. Here, it's subtraction. So we'll keep our denominator the same, over 12, and 5 minus 1 equals 4. So I've got 4/12, but I can reduce that to 1/3. So my final answer here is 1/3. How about this example? Here, my denominators are 20. This means that I've got a whole here out of 20, I've got a whole here out of 20, and their pieces are the same size, so I can add them right away. So I'll keep my denominator of 20, and then I'll add 17 plus 11, and that gives me 28. The issue here is that I've got an improper fraction, so I've got to turn it into a mixed number. 20 goes into 28 one whole time with a remainder of 8, so that's going to give me 1 and 8 over 20. But this can be reduced. I can reduce that by 4, and that's going to give me 1 and 2/5. And that's my final answer. So here's your pause and practice. Just pause and practice. Hit the pause button, and when you're done, unpause the video, and followed by a 3, 2, 1 countdown, your answers will be displayed. Ready, set, go. Alright, so let's take a look at our answers. Number 1 is 3/5. Number 2 is 1.5. Number 3 is 2/3. Number 4 is 1 and 8 over 27. Number 5 is 7 over 11. And number 6 is 4 over 7. So what did we learn from this lesson? Fractions with the same denominator are called like fractions. Fractions with different denominators are called unlike fractions. Denominators are important because they tell you the number of pieces and the size of each piece. When adding or subtracting like fractions, you must keep the denominator and add or subtract the numerators, depending on what operation you have to do. And thanks for using Mr. Ace Math. Don't just pass math, ace it.